So, welcome to the College Alternative Podcast, episode 14 already. Awesome. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Wren Weichman, and he is the visual effects coordinator / supervisor for CorridorDigital. And CorridorDigital, for a lot of you guys have already know what this is, but CorridorDigital is a big YouTube film company. They have over 4 million subscribers, and they push out some pretty awesome videos. And Wren's the guy that he's in charge of all of the special effects that you see in these films. So in today's episode, you're going to be learning about what it's like, what are the job duties, what it's like to be a visual effects supervisor, what kind of training you need to get, and also what makes you attractive to a film company. How do you get hired? So enjoy the episode, guys.
Interviews with the best in their fields, teaching you how to excel in careers that don't require traditional college. You're listening to the College Alternative Podcast. Insider tips and advice, straight from the experts. And now, here is your host, James Christian.
Your specific job title is all around man?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing I do mostly day to day or week to week is I do visual effects and whatnot, but by no means that's like only what I do, you know? I mean, I guess I could just start by saying where I work and what I do there, I guess. So it's like I work at a YouTube channel called CorridorDigital, and by YouTube channel I mean I don't work at YouTube. It's not really a big studio or anything. It's just a bunch of guys, and we put up videos every other week on YouTube. We also have a side channel that's a bit more like a vlogging channel, where we just have a video that goes up every other day, kind of showing our antics and kind of just chronicling our lives as filmmakers. And yeah, so that's kind of like our primary form of business, is just making videos and putting them out there for everyone to watch for free, which is a little weird to think about. But yeah, so from day to day, I'll do things like I'll make visual effects, working on the computer. I'll make things that's basically Photoshop for video. And other days I'll be directing videos. So it's like I'll have an idea for something and we'll shoot it, and then I'll kind of like spearhead the project on that. And just kind of assist other people when needed.
Nice. And then the reason why I wanted to have you on here was because, like I said, you guys work for CorridorDigital, which has an amazing amount of subscriber base, and you guys push out some pretty awesome, fun, not only storylines, but you guys do rely a lot on unique visuals and special effects for that.
It's kind of become our specialty. We pride ourselves in the whole process. You know, we pride ourselves in good cinematography. We like to think that we have pretty good action and whatnot. But the thing that has set us aside from like other channels doing similar things are our visual effects. Sam and Nico, the guys who started the CorridorDigital channel, back in the day, they were like the legends. They were like the best visual effects guys on YouTube, and I was aspiring to be like them. And so I started my own YouTube channel. I was also doing visual effects and whatnot, and then eventually it made more sense for all of us to just kind of work together. So now I'm the one doing most of the visual effects on the channel.
Now, did you start out in LA, or did you kind of move to LA and kind of hook up with them there?
I moved to LA specifically to like pursue YouTube.
Really? Okay.
I did not ever think I was ever going to do YouTube. It was weird. And my post high school career started a very, very different path. So, I mean, I guess should I just go into
Go for it.
Yeah, so I guess like I graduated high school and I did what seemed like the normal thing to do, which was go to college. I went to a college and I ended up finishing. I finished a degree in 4 years for mechanical engineering.
Nice.
And it was a few months before finishing the degree that I realized I didn't actually want to do engineering. I didn't want to sit in a cubicle like designing a bolt that's going to go into the next Boeing 797 or whatever. Just spend 8 months just overanalyzing all the stress concentrations on this bolt, and then spend another 9 months designing a bracket for this bolt. It's like, no, I can't do it. But it wasn't so much of that. I mean, I exaggerate a little bit on what engineers do, but what started off as a hobby quickly became something that I realized not only that I was good at, but was something that I wanted to do. And so it was, I guess in high school, I learned, like a lot of filmmakers, started as they wanted to be filmmakers from a very young age. Like as kids, they borrowed their parents' camera and were making little films with their friends. Never released them anywhere, but they made them.
Yeah.
I was never that person. It started in. Sorry about that. Brake pads are great. So for me, it started in high school when, honestly, legitimately, the very first time I ever did any video editing, I think I was in 10th grade.
Okay.
And I was recording. We got on pay-per-view to our computer through like a little one of those like recording cards, so I could like preserve and watch the movie over. It's basically like the digital version of recording with a VHS tape, what you see on TV. But the recording cut halfway through it, so I had to re-record the second half of the video or the movie. I think it was like The Last Samurai or something like that. And I ended up having to video edit the two halves together. And I was like, that just blew my mind. I'm able to do this? Like, what? And so that was kind of like the start. And then I started messing around with like Windows Movie Player or Windows Movie Maker, editing little clips together to music, not fancy stuff at all. So that was all editing. And for listeners, editing versus visual effects. Editing is the act of taking a bunch of different video clips and putting them together, so that you end up with several shots, alternating takes, stuff like that. Like a movie will have, often thousands of cuts. But if the movie is done right, you never notice those cuts because you're entranced with the story and the visuals. So that was like my first foray into, wow, you can actually do this stuff on your own. And then it was like late high school. I think I was a senior or something. I discovered the video editing software I had. You're able to like crop your footage left and right, and you're able to stack your footage on top of each other. So what I did was I was able to record a shot of me standing in one place, then record another shot with me standing in a different place from the exact same camera angle, and then crop the video layer on top over to the left, so I was able to have two versions of me on screen at the same time. And that was really the beginning of like what I do now. It's like, whoa, I can manipulate video footage to do something that I wouldn't be able to film in camera. And then I didn't really do anything for like 4 years. I did it off and on, like as a hobby, all through college. And then it was like January of 2009, I discovered a website called Video Copilot, and that changed everything for me. And Video Copilot is a website that they make a bunch of plugins and effects for this program called After Effects. Mm-hmm. But more than that, they make tutorials. Or rather, Andrew Kramer, the guy who created the website, he makes video tutorials teaching people how to use Adobe After Effects, which is a visual effects making software. And that was the beginning of a new life for me. I didn't know it at the time. I had just gone through a breakup, so I was all just like, I hate life. I'm just going to sit in my dorm room and just watch videos all day. But instead of just watching like any videos, I was watching these tutorials, because I didn't realize that you can do effects like this on a home computer. Like, I didn't have a good computer at the time. I only had like a little laptop that I brought to college, and it wasn't powerful enough to really do effects. And so I ended up watching every single video tutorial on that website before ever even opening the program. And there were over 100 at the time, each one ranging from half an hour to an hour. And this is while I'm like studying for engineering classes. My grades kind of suffered that semester because I was basically, for all intents and purposes, studying a completely different major. Somehow I still passed. Barely.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, then that summer, I ended up scrounging around a few dollars and built my own computer. I built a PC, just a big desktop.
Yeah.
Very cheaply. I think I built it for like $600, and at the time it was a very, very good computer. Basically the best computer that you can possibly have for $600 because you can build it yourself. You buy all the parts as cheap as you can. You take out all the labor costs of buying a pre-built computer or like an Apple computer that you can't even build if you wanted to. And then I just pretty much spent that whole summer when I wasn't working just working on dumb little effects tests, like how do I teleport from here to there, and just kind of like going through the steps of figuring out, all right, what is the process for doing that, and critically thinking, all right, I want to do this, I have this, how do I get to there? And then I just basically did that for a bunch of different types of effects, and then school started again in the fall, and that was when school actually started getting really hard. It was my junior year of college, and all my classes I were taking suddenly was like, all right, this is hard now. You don't have time to do anything else. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to put this on the back burner. But every now and then, like over Christmas break, over weekends and whatnot, anytime I did find spare time, I was absorbing everything I could about filmmaking. And that was, I think, the biggest thing for me is that, well, first off, practice. Through practice and experience, you gain the most, I guess, skills, for lack of a better way of saying it. It's like people say like, oh, I learned best by doing. It's like, yeah, everyone does. That's the human race for you. You learn by doing. It's much harder to learn by reading or by listening from other people tell you things. However, those are still very valid ways to learn. And so when I wasn't doing, I was reading articles. I started following a bunch of different websites that followed filmmaking, followed visual effects, and just casually like, oh, I have an hour to spare. I just read a few articles on various things. I have no idea what. I just scoured the internet for all kinds of different things, and just kind of, because it was a hobby. That's all it was. I was legitimately interested in this thing, and that's another key thing, is that this was something I wanted to learn, and so without actively trying to learn it, I was learning it nonetheless. And compare that to, say, something like college, where, or school in general, where you're thrust into this thing. And college is also really weird because you are paying for it. You know, you are spending thousands of dollars a year to sit in a class and be like, I just want to go home and sleep. I want to be anywhere except for here. It's the weirdest conundrum, right? It's like, I'm paying dozens of dollars per minute to sit here and be like, I can't wait to go hang out with my friends and do anything other than this. And there's something about the act of being forced to sit there in like this constricted, old school style way of learning.
As opposed to following your passion that you want to do.
Exactly, yeah. It's like the internet changed everything because it made it so that resources are available to everyone for free. Yes. I'm a firm believer, especially in today's world, that anything you want to learn about, you can learn. In fact, I've spent the last 3 months learning about batteries. Like, it sounds weird, right? But I see the future as going towards like solar and battery powered stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just like, out of curiosity, like, I want to know more about like batteries. So like one day in the future, I could start building my own battery packs and doing all that sort of stuff. Not something I'm actively pursuing now, but I've just spent the last several months, watching videos on YouTube, like, oh, how do you solder together battery packs? Like, what are the chemistry differences between different types of batteries? Like, all this stuff. And it's like, I'm studying this just because I'm interested. It's not going to serve any purpose in my daily life. It's just a hobby. Mm-hmm. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. So my point in that is that because I wanted to learn batteries, I discovered that there are incredible resources online to teach you everything you would even want to know about batteries. And so that's where I started with visual effects. It's like, okay, there's fantastic resources online, and that will help you learn everything you need to know, but that will not get you there. So I guess that'll lead me to my next point, which is it still requires hard work. You still have to like go through the act of acting on what you're learning. Mm-hmm. And that just requires doing it. Yeah, there's like a famous phrase or something like that where in making things, it doesn't matter what you're making. The most important aspect of making something is finishing it and then moving on. Because then you can sit back and analyze what you've done. Was this good? Was this bad? What can I improve on? What was good about this? And it's that act of actually self-analyzing what you've created or what you've worked on and what you've done, and taking that knowledge and be like, okay, next iteration, I will do these things differently. I will improve upon these things that I kind of struggled with.
Yeah, well, and making mistakes too. And that's almost more important, is making the mistakes and
Absolutely.
Learning from those. So, sort of two sections in your life here. First is high school, right, when you kind of dabbled in it a little bit, and then next is college. Did you realize that you had a passion for this in high school versus college?
In high school, I mean, I don't know if I ever realized it. I certainly didn't have any friends who were doing doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it was something that I enjoyed doing. I don't know if I ever realized I had a passion for it. It wasn't until like late college when I started realizing that not only did I enjoy it, but I realized that I was kind of okay at it, I guess.
Okay.
And it was the combination of that I think encouraged me the most. It wasn't that I just went around being like, man, I'm the best visual effects artist you've ever seen in your life. Like, oh my God, guys, look how awesome I am. But it was like, it wasn't that at all. It was kind of like a confidence, like, hey, that actually wasn't that bad. And people are telling me that's actually pretty cool. It's like, it's very encouraging and it helps you push forward. Yeah, again, lost my train of thought. Don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so you started in college. You graduated, got your mechanical engineering degree, your engineering degree, and then did you actually get a job within engineering right off the bat upon graduating, or did you immediately go into visual effects?
So I didn't get a job out of college. I tried to get a job working on a nuclear submarine in Hawaii. It was a government job.
Nice.
That was the
Nice.
job I was legitimately trying to get, but I ended up not getting it. And so it was around that time there was this YouTube program called Next Up, which was basically YouTube as a company found a bunch of creators and just supported them. They gave them money and resources to help them grow their YouTube channel. And it was a contest, like, you had to apply, you made videos asking people to vote for you, stuff like that. It was this big deal. And I made my own submission video that actually made it to like the final voting round.
Wow.
And so that was like a big, almost like a wake up call. Like, whoa, I'm now on like a national stage of competition where YouTube might give me $35,000 to like work on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I ultimately didn't win. I didn't make it. But it was the fact that suddenly bigger YouTube creators had noticed who I was. Leaving comments like, hey, you make cool videos, hope to see you make more videos someday. It was the amalgamation of all like the different encouragements and all that stuff that I realized, you know what, I'm gonna give this a chance. And so out of college I worked for a few months in a metal shop, but I ended up just kind of not. I quit my job there and just started trying to make YouTube videos. I had enough of a savings to last me a while, and then I just tried making YouTube videos, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I was just doing them with my friends. I had my friends help me come up with ideas. They were acting in it. I was doing pretty much all of the legwork and doing like the camera stuff, all the editing and effects. But I wouldn't have been able to do it without my friends, acting in it, because we were all in improv in college, so we were really good at like just acting on the fly and just like doing stuff. So we did that for a while, but then I quickly realized, I don't think I'm going to get anywhere doing this only so I went to school in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
And I love Oregon. It's fantastic. But there's not the biggest filmmaking community there. And that's what I really needed, was other people doing like-minded stuff. So I was kind of essentially isolated from learning from other people who are much better at this than I was. And so I took a trip down to LA in that fall, just to visit, see what it's like to be here in Los Angeles. I stayed with my cousin, and while I was down there, I ended up meeting up with Freddie Wong and CorridorDigital.
Okay.
And at the time, they were the two biggest like filmmaking, visual effects, action-based filmmakers on all of YouTube. This would have been fall of 2011, and yeah, I just kind of hung out with them for a night as they filmed a YouTube video, and I realized it's like what I want to do. Like, I need to get down here for this. So like a month later, after visiting, I packed up everything I could into my car, and I drove down here. And I got here, I was like, yes, I'm in LA. Now what? Like,
Exactly,
I honestly had zero plan. I just got down here, and I to the point I didn't know what to do. I slept in my car in a Whole Foods parking lot for like a couple days.
Oh, no.
And eventually, so there's this YouTube MCM called Full Screen, and at the time, they were much smaller. Now they have like hundreds and hundreds of employees employing thousands of YouTube channels. They partner YouTube channels. At the time, they only had less than a dozen people, and I was one of their first partners. So like the CEO himself like invited me to just sleep on the couch at the office because it was a small enough company, and it was like, yeah, it was a fun little thing. They were encouraging me to start up YouTube and all this stuff, and I eventually found an apartment, and so. Yeah, I tried focusing on YouTube for the following year while also trying to make money. And so that's another like thing about my situation that is unique and perhaps even unfair is that I was able to work out a deal with my family to basically get a loan for like an entire year to just focus on this. And that's an opportunity most people will never really get. So I'm very lucky in that regard. And the loan basically covered all of my rent expenses. I was living in a very, very cheap apartment, and it covered food. So pretty much the essentials for being able to live. And I took freelance jobs, and I ended up getting a part-time job as a video editor for CorridorDigital, and all that stuff kind of just helped pad just living expenses. But more than anything, I was treating that stuff as more of like an internship, I guess.
Yeah, developing your skills.
Yeah, so I was working part-time running the second channel for CorridorDigital, and that was the behind-the-scenes channel. So CorridorDigital, the place I work at now, I started working at in 2012, so not long after I actually moved to LA. And so I didn't treat it as a job. I treated this as an awesome opportunity to learn from two of the best and most innovative filmmakers on YouTube as they, do their stuff. So I was learning directly from them, like how do they go about these processes, like not just about visual effects, but about like actually making videos online. So I ended up growing a lot over the next year and a half from that. And so then YouTube ended up rolling out a second Next Step program, and I did end up winning that. So the monetary reward was like less than a tenth of what it was for the first round. They're like, oh yeah, all of those YouTubers just bought cars and really, really nice computers and stuff. They didn't really help push their YouTube channel. I mean, a lot of creators did, but most didn't. So they reassessed. I was like, man, it would have been great to get that much money, but it was still a great opportunity, and it funded a short film that I ended up spending like half a year on, which was this Harry Potter short film called The Omen Chronicles.
Okay.
And this ended up kind of being like my calling card, I guess. It was I had taken all of the skills that I had learned over the years in filmmaking, in directing, in visual effects, and I'll get to this in a moment, but also learning, and kind of just put them all into like a big cinematic package. Also producing, coordinating with other people to get people on set, getting actors lined up, getting a sound designer who will sound design your video, doing all the sound effects, a musician who will score your video. All that stuff, getting it all together, and I finished it, put it out on YouTube, and people seem to like it. But that's the sort of thing that you can't do on YouTube sustainably, because I definitely did not break even on that video. But it got attention, and it's hard to put a price tag on what that sort of attention can get you. Suddenly, people were taking me seriously, as like, oh wow, this guy actually knows how to do visual effects, because in the VFX world, there's like two completely different types of effects. One is like the 2D area, which is After Effects, doing motion graphics or doing various sort of effects that kind of alter your image, kind of like Photoshop for video, stuff like that. And then there's the 3D model and render things in 3D space, not necessarily like 3D movies, but like, CG. What is commonly known as like, oh, that's CGI, like Transformers or Jurassic Park dinosaurs. All that stuff is rendered in 3D. And so I specialized in doing like smoke simulations and rendering smoke for the Harry Potter video. And that was something that most VFX people don't end up getting into. And if they do get into that, they don't really specialize in the other half, which is, the filmmaking side of things. So that was kind of what I ended up specializing in, was doing both of those things. And so I guess my point is that Harry Potter video ended up working out in my favor because I'd shown off. It was basically just a big VFX reel. That's all it was.
No, but that's awesome though, and it sounds like you developed yourself and developed a community, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
got those contacts within that community, which is huge for mentoring and for linking up with different people to kind of collaborate. So that's kind of neat. So you kind of developed, or you kind of initially talked about like your day-to-day job duties here, but
hmm
is a visual effects editor what you're doing? Is it different from, say, somebody who's working on a big film in terms of day to day, or are they kind of just stuck in a dark room somewhere doing visual effects 24/7 versus what you're doing, what we see on YouTube?
So the biggest difference between what I do and, like, say, working at a studio, and you can name
Yeah,
any number
like
of
a huge studio.
studios.
Yeah,
Like, the most famous is probably Industrial Light and Magic. They do all the Marvel movies and,
yeah,
Star
yeah.
Wars, all that stuff. Pretty much any visual effect that is, like, mind-blowingly good is, like, it was probably ILM or Weta Workshop and or Weta Digital down in New Zealand. They did the Planet of the Apes movies, and of course Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, etc.
Yeah, huge
Uh,
effects. Yeah,
yeah, so it's like there's an army of people working on those movies, and each of those artists will work on a shot until it is flawless, absolutely perfect. It is not acceptable until it's that point. And so you might get an artist spending, over a month or, weeks on a single visual effects shot, going down to every single detail, perfecting each and every aspect of that. And so, I mean, trying to form my argument here, which is, at the end of the day, it's a lot of hard work for those guys. They spend dozens of hours every week, definitely more than 40, upwards of like 60 to 80
Oof.
in crunch times,
Yeah.
just working on visual effects, like mandatory 12-hour days, like 5-6 days a week sort of thing, especially leading up to the final like push to deliver something.
Uh-huh.
And that's because studios get into this issue of like, oh, like a bidding war, for instance. Like, two studios are trying to get the effects contract for this new movie, and so they start kind of underbidding each other, or start being like, I can do it in this amount of time.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
they realize once they got the bid, it's like, oh, we can't really do it in that amount of time.
I can do it
but
in
we're gonna
6
try.
days.
Yeah, exactly. So you end up with overworked artists, and it's a very unthanked job, an unthankful job, if that makes sense. Like,
Okay,
the
yeah.
reward is very low. It's like, at the end of the day, your reward is that you get paid fairly nicely, and your name is somewhere in the pool of 1,000 names at the end of Iron Man 4. For me, I didn't really want that, and so I much prefer the YouTube route, where, I guess for vanity's sake, it's more about, not about me, but it's like I'm not distracted by 1,000 other names. I get to actually make something that no, that's going a direction that I don't think is right. I don't know. It's like, it's more thanked. You put out a video and millions of people watch it. There's like no higher praise than that, is having millions of people watch something you make. That is like the most humbling thing that you can possibly have happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of time, it is a lot of hard work. I guess I'm kind of known for overstressing on the job a lot, and just like, oh, I gotta get this render done. Like, oh, it's gotta do this. I'm gonna pull all-nighter to make sure it's good and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't think I put in as much time as a lot of those artists working on those big movies. So it's like, it's hard, because you think you know how to do something, and so you try doing it. But a lot of the time, what people want you to do is something you don't know how to do.
Yes.
The next movie is like, oh, this is going to be so cool. We think we know how to do what the director wants us to do. We have a pretty good idea. So then you start trying to do it, and you realize, oh, there's this hiccup we didn't foresee at all. And, oh, there's this other issue that no one expected. Stuff like that. And it's all just about how you deal with those issues. And, yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of fun. Being on YouTube, is because you guys get to push out shorter films, but also you get to do more unique things like, hey, let's try this or let's try this, as opposed to that Iron Man 10 that's coming out that's kind of rehashing sort of the same visual effects as
Yeah.
prior. Exactly. So
And
it's kind of nice that you guys are able to, boom, let's try to throw this out there, see how the community reacts to it, see if we can even
and
do it.
the downside to that, because of the frequency that we have to upload at, I don't get the time to like perfect shots anymore.
Okay.
It's like you get it to a good enough stage and then you move on, because you just simply can't afford the time to do that extra like 4% of the shot that would take 50% of the time to do. So it's like, it's all about finding the balance of the most efficient use of time to get the best looking product for the time. And there's so many times where I'll finish an effect, I'm like, man, if I was able to spend another day, I would add all these little things, polish out these other things. So like, we'll get called out on it every now and then, like, oh, the effects here were a little weak, or like, oh, the tracking wasn't so good at that moment. I'm like, I know, I really know. It's a bit of a bummer sometimes, because just like, as an artist, you want to perfect things, you know, you want to like make things as best as they can possibly be, and you do get that on feature-length movies, working on studios. You get to perfect stuff until it's as good as possible, and then you have this really cool looking reel where you're like, yeah, I made that, and everyone's like, whoa. And so here, I still make stuff that is really cool, and I'm very proud of the work that I do. However, there are times when I'm like, it's very rough around the edges. People, the vast majority of people will never notice the roughness.
Yeah.
At least not explicitly. But it's an artist thing where I'm just like,
the OCD kicks in.
I can't complain. At the end of the day, I really can't complain. I'm in a fantastically wonderful position to be able to do all this stuff to begin with. So,
and plus,
it's not a complaint as much as just like, it would be nice.
And plus, as YouTube grows and more people start viewing these videos, and you get your name out there and become more and more popular, I see you guys being able to parlay that into larger and larger contracts, though, too, in terms of, hey, I want to fund you to produce these larger and larger films, which is nice.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're slowly getting to that stage. We just signed a deal with YouTube Red, so we're going to be doing a YouTube Red series next year called Lifeline. And I'm not personally going to be working on that, but Sam and Nico, the directors of CorridorDigital, they're going to be directing that, and they're producing that with The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So his production company and us are working together to make that. Not like, I don't think he's going to be in the show. He might have like a cameo, but I know. It's like, really cool. Why can't he star in it? Oh, it's because he's the highest paid actor in all of Hollywood, and a YouTube series can't afford him? Oh, okay.
That's still really badass, though. And that's really
it's cool to have that sort of association, because it kind of like helps, I don't know, validitize?
Yeah, exactly.
What we're doing. It's like, it's cool stuff.
Nice. So you were talking about what it works in some of these big studio companies versus kind of your side of the house there too, the smaller studios that are out there, and kind of transitioning to training. Now you kind of did this kind of part-time. You watched YouTube, you watched tutorials online and just kind of figured it out on your own. But are schools kind of picking this up now, or are art schools picking up visual editing as a certification or a license? Are there certifications out there now that people can get?
There are certifications that you can get, and I'm probably not the best person to talk about them, because I've never gotten them. I'm probably not the best person to talk to you about like the best strategies for getting into big studios, going like which school to go to, like what sort of strategies to employ to be employed. But from my experience, it doesn't matter where you go to school. It doesn't matter how you learned what you know how to do, as long as you can do what you say you can do.
Okay, yeah.
Like a studio, I like to think that they don't care if you went to the Nauman School of Arts or the Vancouver Film Institute, or I'm probably butchering these names, but there's a bunch of various visual effects schools, or even film school, that you can get your pedigree, you can get your certification, and it's like, okay, sweet. So you can prove that you went to school and your grades are good enough to show that you did well in that, but how are you going to be able to make me money? At the end of the day, that's what you...
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, what can you make? Is what you make good? And I don't think any college degree can really do that for you. I don't know. What's my point here? I'm trying to say it's like...
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, if you can't translate what the director wants you to do and actually do the work, I mean, what's the point of having a piece of paper?
It's like you can be certified in Adobe After Effects. You can go take classes for After Effects to get a certification and then pass this, and then you can have like a little thing saying, I am certified to know how to use After Effects. It's like, cool. I didn't care if you're certified or not. I'd be able to know whether you're good or not at After Effects by looking at 30 seconds of your work. Just like, how is your compositing skills? Oh, not bad. All right, you can do exactly what I want you to do. Here you go. Oh, man. Oh, I had a fantastic point, and I totally lost it. Oh, yes. So the thing about schooling and doing something technical like software, using software as a technical skill set, and I kind of believe that's not something you can be taught. It's something you have to teach yourself. So schooling is great for teaching like the philosophy behind decisions. Like getting a film degree, for instance, is fantastic for learning the principles and theory behind, filmmaking. Like what is the purpose of making a camera angle like this and editing, pacing in a certain way. But I don't think schooling is good for teaching you how to use the pen tool in After Effects, how to use these certain effects. Because of the technical nature of those sort of things, you're much better off just watching a tutorial on, all right, what do these buttons do? Cool. I now know in the back of my head what those buttons do. I'm going to use those buttons to do something that I want to do. And that's where you learn technical stuff. So that's what I was getting at earlier when I was saying, like, you learn best by doing. It's like you're in a workshop, right? Or like a wood shop where you have like a saw, you have hammer and nails. A teacher can be like, all right, the trick to this thing is to hold the nail just like this and take the hammer, and then you hit the nail. It's like, cool. You could have just told me, take the nail, make sure not to hit your fingers, and just hit the nail with the hammer. And you can read about that all you want, but you're not really going to know how to do that unless you actually do it. But school will be great for like teaching you the philosophy behind why you would want to use a hammer versus a screwdriver to put in a nail into a block of wood. Maybe that analogy is a bit. No.
I totally get it.
It's like, yeah. After Effects, editing in general, so Premiere Pro is another fantastic piece of software from Adobe. That's for editing videos. So like. Let's say you shot a bunch of shots with your camera, you end up with a bunch of footage. You use Adobe Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro or Avid, whatever your editing software choice is. You slap all your different video clips into your timeline. You trim your in points and out points so that it starts at a certain time, then cuts to the next clip, yada yada.
Yeah.
Learning the program, learning like using to use like the cut tool to be able to navigate the software, all that stuff. You learn that yourself just by practice, by doing. Like by riding a bike, you learn by doing that. But schooling in stuff like that, you learn for like, all right, when is a good point to cut this video, or when is a good point to hold? Stuff like that. That's more like the theory. That's stuff that you could learn through schooling. But I learned all that stuff through reading, through watching videos on YouTube. And see, it's hard to discount the sheer amount of wealth of knowledge that is on YouTube. There are so many video essays just breaking down the theory behind, like, say, a movie or like a director's style. There's fantastic resources like Nerd Writer breaks down a lot of cool stuff. There's Every Frame a Painting. Oh my God, there's so many different YouTube channels that all they do is literally just make videos, which are really semester-long thesis statements breaking down an artist's work. So you can go to college and read your friend's thesis, or you can just log on to YouTube and watch this guy's video who does this for a living. He's like so good at it that he's built a following analyzing films and stuff. And it's like, if you just watch his work and really try to absorb it the best way you can, you will end up learning a lot of the same stuff that you would learn in film school, because they are applying their knowledge from film school and sharing it with the world for free. And so it's like, if I go back to saying, it's like, if you want to learn anything, you can. You just got to look it up.
And just do it. Practice.
Yeah.
So, what editing programs would you suggest a person start out with first? Is that Adobe After Effects, something that's so common that everyone should start out with that program, or is there something else that they should start out with?
I'm personally a huge fan of Adobe, everything Adobe does. So like Adobe After Effects, Adobe Premiere Pro, Photoshop, they make a huge library of software that you can get every month through a subscription service that they call the Creative Cloud. And so you just pay, for a professional, it's like $50 a month, and then you have access to all their software. Back in the day, it used to be like After Effects is $1,000, and then we're going to come out with a new version of After Effects next year, which is another $1,000. So you have to spend that to upgrade. Whereas now, you just spend $50 a month, and you get everything that they offer every year, completely up to date. And I can totally understand that being like kind of an unreasonably high price to ask for like kids who are just kind of interested in
that want to
this sort of area. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm interested to trying to like do something about this, but I'm not going to spend my month's allowance on this. It's like, I totally get that, and there are other options out there. For instance, there's HitFilm, which is a software package that kind of combines both editing and visual effects into one streamlined piece of software. And that's what I generally actually recommend to people just starting out.
Okay.
And that's an upfront cost. I think it's like $200 for the pro software. Let me rephrase that. It's free for the bulk of their... So it's like, if you're just interested, you can download HitFilm for free, and it's 90% of what you would ever want to do.
Yeah.
At least as far as until you're like, okay, I'm ready to take this seriously. Then you can spend the $200 for the pro package that allows you to do a little bit more advanced stuff. Not much more advanced. You can still do pretty much anything you'd want to do in HitFilm free. In fact, what they've been doing is they will release, say, HitFilm 3 just came out. Their version 3 software, so now their version 2 has become free. And then they'll release version 4, and that'll be their prime package, and their version 3 that was $200 last year is now free. And so that's what I always recommend to people who are just interested in dabbling in it, because the barriers to entry, I think that's the wording, is really high for stuff like this. When software costs so much, it's like you're never even going to know if this is something you want to do or are good at.
Yeah.
Because you can't afford the software. Fortunately, most of those companies employ like student discounts. A lot of the time, it's just straight up free if you're a student. So if you have like a university email address or just a high school email address or something like that, some sort of like student verification, like a student ID. I haven't done any of that in years, so I forget the processes. But yeah, it's like if you can prove you're a student, a lot of the time you'll be able to get software free, if not just a fraction of the cost. And so that also really helps for learning stuff.
Nice. So other barriers to entry would be a computer. Now, you said you initially started out with a $600 computer, but are some of these programs starting to run so fast that you need more than $600 to invest in a computer to be able to edit legitimately?
No and yes.
Okay.
It's like you don't need a really powerful computer. I mean, my iPhone right here is like more powerful than the laptop I took to college. And it's like I actually did install After Effects on that laptop, even though I wasn't able to do very much. Because here's the thing: it's like if you have a computer, you can run After Effects. It might take an hour to render a little video clip versus 10 minutes on a much nicer computer, but if you have the patience, you can still do it. You can still learn. But if you're taking it seriously and you're like, all right, this is something I want to do, then it will certainly help to have a nicer computer, just because at the end of the day, the only thing a nicer computer provides you is more time.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like if you're taking this stuff seriously, you're making money off of this stuff, then you want to use your time as efficiently as possible, and the easiest way to do that is to have a faster computer, because then it's like you have less time to, or rather, it allows you more time to do more things. So it's like I can have a much slower computer, although today I'd probably get too frustrated with a slower computer and just give up and be like, this is the worst thing ever. It's unusable. And it's like, okay, I'm being a little hyperbolic. I could still totally use this. I just have to be more patient. So absolutely no, you do not have to have a computer, but it will make your life, you do not have to have a nice computer. You do not have to have a fast computer. Like, you don't have to spend $5,000 to make a really, really nice computer. When I started off, I made the nicest computer I can make for $600. That's the other thing. I learned how to build PCs off of YouTube. And it's far easier than most people realize. Far easier. There are so many great tutorials out there for putting videos together and walking beginners through the entire process of, okay, you have decided you want to make a PC, but you have no idea where to start. Well, fortunately, you're watching this video because we're going to teach you how to do it. And it's like, first thing you want to do is you want to look at a motherboard, then a graphics card, then a CPU and a case and all this. Don't forget the power supply. You got to make sure you do this stuff. And it suddenly takes it from being a mystery and an overwhelming mystery at that to something that's achievable. You know, it being able to just simply take the mystery out of something doable. You could so much easier just because it's not. You kind of know what you're doing now. Yeah, I mean, you can make a PC. I recommend anyone who wants to do that. Just even if it's just a few $100s, just build a PC. Just spend a couple nights just kind of researching it, and then there's fantastic websites for like picking your parts, and it puts it all together, and it even double checks your list. Like, are you missing anything? Okay, you might want to do this instead of that, stuff like, that sort of thing. And yeah, that's easily the best investment you can make. I would invest your money into a computer before you ever invest it into a camera.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know, that was a mistake I almost made a few years ago. So when I got Next Up, they ended up giving me a $3,000 grant, and I was going to take that money and buy a Sony FS100, which was like a $4,000. I'm going to move a little bit. I was getting the light in my face, which is like a $4,000 really nice Sony camera. And I fall into this trap of wanting something but not realizing you don't need it. And that was the trap I was starting to fall into. Is like, I convinced myself that I needed this camera to be competitive visually on YouTube with other people. And it's like, especially in today's age where it's if you have a smartphone, you have pretty much the best camera you can possibly want. You do not need a nice camera, and it's very hard to convince people of that. It's very hard because they want to have that really nice depth of field. They want to have that really high quality image, and the high quality bit rate to have good colors and all that stuff. And it's like, guess what? No one cares how good your footage looks. What they do care about are things like sound and story. And it's like, you can have a pretty crappy image, and people will still watch your videos. Like, you can look at any of the top YouTubers on YouTube right now, and it's like, none of them have really, really nice cameras.
Or they didn't start out with really nice cameras.
Exactly. I mean, they might have nice cameras now, but they certainly didn't start out with that. They just used what they had, which was maybe like a little point-and-shoot camera. If you really, really want to spend the money to like get a camera, I would recommend one of the entry-level Canon DSLRs. That's the route I ended up going, because that'll get you that depth of field look. You can really, you can get different lenses. If you really want to invest your money, go something cheap. I wouldn't spend over $1,000 for both your camera and lens system. And that's if you are taking it seriously and you're like, all right, I want to pursue this. I want to make the best visuals I possibly can. You don't need to have like a GH4. Like, you don't have to spend a few $1,000s on a camera. I would recommend before, maybe eventually you want to get a nice camera.
Well, yeah,
eventually,
yeah.
If you are taking it seriously and you're pursuing a path, you want to get nicer and nicer cameras. For instance, at Corridor, we have a Red Dragon, which is a cinema camera. They shot the Hobbit films. Pretty much every movie these days is shot with the camera that we have in our YouTube studio. But it's also like a $30,000 camera.
Well, you didn't start out with that, though, either. And
Absolutely not, no.
And I think the takeaway here is if you are smart, which you keep on saying, if you are smart and passionate and you want to get into this, be smart to the point where, hey, I want to develop myself first before blowing out my entire budget on that $30,000 camera. Let's be smart. Let's learn initially on some of the cheaper things out there and develop yourself first and then grow, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And the easiest way to do that is to invest into a computer. So as I was mentioning earlier, I was this close to buying one of those cameras, and at the last minute I was like, I'm gonna hold off. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up spending that $3,000 on a computer, and so I ended up building the best computer I possibly could, and it rivaled an Apple computer that was 3 times the cost.
Nice.
So I had this is in early 2013, like February 2013. I built like the best computer I possibly could. I had like 32 gigs of RAM. I had the best graphics card, a really fast CPU. I had a friend who worked at Intel who was able to get me like one of their nicest CPUs at half price. I just paid him to buy it with a 50% discount. Utilizing different stuff like that to just get the best deal you can. So I ended up having this really nice computer, and so I ended up spending the rest of that year working on that Harry Potter film, and it was all in 4K. Had well over 100 VFX shots in it. I did, I think, 98% of all the shots. I did have help on a couple shots that I didn't know how to do.
Which is absolutely fine. I mean, that mentoring, asking people for help.
And a lot of filmmaking, or a lot of just making videos in general, is learning how to ask for help in the right way. It's like, okay, I don't know how to do this thing, but I know my friend does know how to do this thing, and then you approach them. You don't want to just be like, hey, do this shot, you might not.
You might not have a friend after that.
Yeah, right. It's like there are ways to go about this. Yeah. So that computer I still use today. It is still my primary computer, and in fact, I only last week replaced the graphics card on it. So that graphics card I got was like a GTX 680. It was like a $500 graphics card in 2013, and it lasted me 3 years. Like, I played all of the Titanfall 2 campaign on that graphics card. But after I finished that campaign, I was like, yeah, it's time for an upgrade. It was struggling. So I ended up getting a $200 GPU, which was like the third tier down, because I'm like, I can't justify spending a huge amount of money on a graphics card at home when I'm not using my home computer for visual effects anymore. I do visual effects and editing at home every now and then still, but it's hard to justify it when you're like, I only really want this for games. So I just got like the most efficient power per dollar graphics card I could. Yeah, I got like the 1060 for those curious.
Nice.
Okay, so big concept question here is YouTube the future for films? That's a big question, but what's your opinion on that?
A couple years ago I would have said yes, but now I don't think so.
Really? Okay.
Because YouTube itself has kind of like changed how they want to be as a platform over the last year or two. They've kind of shifted away from like the viral video and kind of focused more on video retention and watch time. Like, how long are you spending on the website watching videos? And so to encourage that, they've introduced basically rewards. Not rewards. It's like the longer a viewer watches videos on YouTube, the more ad revenue you make. So it's like, it used to be you would make a certain amount of money off of YouTube video depending on how many views it got. That's not the case anymore. Now you get you make money based on how many minutes watched a video gets. So the longer the video, the more chances you get for more watch time.
Okay.
Which is, so it's like if you have a 10-minute video that gets like, say, 100,000 views versus a 1-minute video that got well over 1 million views, the 10-minute video at a tenth of the view count will make much more money than the 1 million view video. And that has posed an issue for us at CorridorDigital because we've always focused on making short, like 2-minute videos, like twice a month or less. And granted, those videos typically get, more than 1 million views, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But over the last year, YouTube's not been focusing on that, so those videos have been making less and less money. So we started focusing on doing this vlogging channel where we essentially just chronicle our life, and those videos are long every other day. And now that channel is making as much money as the Corridor channel, even though it's getting effect. But because we're pumping out so much more content, the content is so much longer, YouTube, that is starting to become the trend on YouTube, is making longer form content and more of it. So movies is the viral video equivalent of that. So it's like if you're to compare our Corridor videos versus our vlog videos, it's the same thing as saying a movie versus a Netflix series, if that makes sense.
No, and
Netflix,
that's kind of where I wanted to go with it. Is YouTube kind of going to go the route of Netflix, where you're going to start producing, almost like
that's the exact route they would love to go. So YouTube Red is kind of like the premium service comparable to Netflix, to Hulu Plus, to HBO Go. It's in its infancy right now. It's not that great, but YouTube wants to be a competitor to those platforms. So they're funding original content that is long form content, and not long form in the sense of feature length long form, but like 10 episodes that are half-hour long or more.
Yes, yeah, and working with collaborators like you guys. Yeah.
So it's definitely become apparent that for YouTube, and especially just entertainment in general, is more the long form content that is, or a new season for this series has come out and you watch the whole thing. I don't think movies will ever go away, but it is interesting to note that the entertainment economy, the platforms don't really favor it anymore. Granted, movies still are making the most money because they're going to theaters and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars and all that stuff. I think that will continue to be a thing, but outside of the movie theater, movies I think will become less and less common.
Yeah. Well, when you have Netflix that has hour-long, like Game of Thrones or Stranger Things, where you can develop that storyline for so much longer and the characters for so much longer, you get more involved with the characters and the stories.
It makes it almost like more rewarding because you can follow this stuff longer.
Yes.
Whereas a movie, it might be a really, really good movie, or it might be a really, really spectacularly visual movie, but after an hour and a half, it's over, and you're like, all right, well, that was a fun little snippet of time. Which is why you see a lot of sequels, because people aren't done with those stories. They want to be involved in those universes longer, and that's why we're seeing so many sequels lately. Is because first off, it's safe for the studio to fund sequels. They're like, all right, the first one made this amount of money. Chances are it'll be able to make at least a fraction, most of that money second time around, so it's easier to fund. It's harder to fund original content in movies these days, but
as opposed to YouTube, original content. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why you get so much more pissed off when they kill off, another Stark. Damn it! I was really enjoying this guy.
Yeah, and especially like the last season of Game of Thrones is a fantastic example. Those final 2 episodes are like, they had the production quality of not just a movie, but like a blockbuster movie. Like it had that production value. They were fantastic movies they just happened to be 58 minutes long. It's like the definition of what a movie is, I think, is changing.
Yes, yeah, and that's kind of exciting and neat. And it seems like with what you're doing and a lot of other guys that are doing it, it seems like it's more open and more maybe possibly accessible for people to kind of get into this
Mm-hmm.
career field, and people are kind of saying, "Hey, this is kind of a possibility that I can get into and become excited about," which is exciting to
And
see.
yeah, and that's the great thing about YouTube is that any person with a camera can start making videos and put them on YouTube. Any person with a computer and likes to play video games can start, making gaming videos or whatever. There is zero barrier to entry on YouTube. Getting popular on YouTube is a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Especially lately, there's so much noise now. I don't know what the numbers are anymore because it's always increasing, but it's like 72 hours of video is being uploaded every minute or something like that. Like an absurdly mind-bogglingly high number of content. And so it's like you got to swim through all that noise just to get views, especially if your primary focus is getting views. It's like anymore it's hard to do. Even when I was starting out in like 2011, thought I had started too late. I was like, man, if I had only started 2 years ago, it would be a different story. But I don't know. I say that, and yet every year there are hundreds of new creators becoming massively popular out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they started this year, and now all of a sudden they have a fantastic YouTube channel. It's like if you make good content and you're very consistent with it, viewers will come. They will, especially if you can prove that you are going to continue uploading content and will be consistent with it. All it takes is one video, and they're like, okay, that was cool. And then they see a second, like, oh, okay, no, you're doing this as a thing. I'm going to subscribe and like see what you'll come up with next.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a form of investment. Absolutely. It is certainly harder to do that. I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say if it's harder now than it was years ago because the audience on YouTube is much larger than it was years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that in our lifetime, YouTube just started out too. That's kind of neat how it's developed so much in just a few short years. That is really, really neat. So, a couple final questions here is, let's say a person wants to do this. They invested their time. They developed themselves. They got the computer. They started getting on After Effects. They're getting good at it. Is LA the place to? Do they have to move to LA, or can they do collaborations across the country?
That's a hard one to answer because it's like if you're uploading videos to YouTube or you're just doing visual effects or whatever, you can do that from anywhere. You don't have to be in Los Angeles. You can, like, by its definition, you can literally do that from anywhere. The main advantage.
So can a guy in Michigan do this then?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. But what you're missing out on is the industry. And so that's what I got by moving here to LA, is teaming up with other like-minded people and working together, learning from those other people. If you already have a community that you could learn from and work with and collaborate with, then you're good to go. Where I was in Portland, I didn't have that community. I think there is a filmmaking community in Portland, Oregon. I couldn't find it. I found it easier to move to LA. But, I mean, yeah, it's like, Corridor is as a company is thinking about moving to somewhere else outside of LA, just because it's like we're very self-contained. We can do everything we want to do ourselves. We don't have to be in LA. Yeah, it's great to have the production assets, on hand. Oh, we need this really, really obscure, specific makeup artist, and they also have to be really good at doing stunts. Nice. You can find that person here in LA. You're not going to be able to find that person anywhere else. So, like, for production stuff, LA is the place to be, but you don't have to be in LA. And as long as you can find people to work with and people to learn from, you don't have to be in LA either. That was just the route that I took. And it is kind of like a thing that's what like people in the entertainment industry do, is they move to LA.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to say don't move to LA because I wouldn't have succeeded if I hadn't moved to LA. But at the same time, I don't see it's necessary.
Well, that interconnectivity is just getting more and more and bigger. So it seems like you guys can talk easier, collaborate easier on projects
You know,
across
building
the
a
country?
network has always been a thing, no matter what industry you're in. It's like it's all about building a network, building those contacts. You know, people you know who can do things. You know, it's like there's something to be said for getting good at making friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like that
Oh,
is
yeah.
actually a very important thing. Like something I've learned since moving to LA is that going to parties is actually work. I love parties because you just hang out with a bunch of friends. It's like, you know, you have drinks and hang out. It's a fun time. But at the end of the day, it's like you could actually consider that work because you're networking. You know,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
you're building connections with other people.
Yes.
That like, oh, hey, you know, you discover that you have things in common, and then like you won't talk for like 8 months, and then 8 months goes by, and all of a sudden they hit you up out of the blue because you have formed that connection and with their like, hey, you want to do this thing? Like, yeah, you know, stuff like that.
No.
And so
I totally
it's
understand.
very
That one
important.
handshake, that you had
Exactly.
gets you somewhere. Yeah.
So, you know, networking is a very, very important part of any industry. And even though what I do is literally just make videos and put them on YouTube, and I can do that from anywhere, it's still at the end of the day about people and making contacts and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, forming friendships with all kinds of different people. So, yeah.
Nice.
I mean, no, like, the most important thing is just working hard. No matter what you do, as long as you put your mind to it and work harder than the next person, you'll probably be fine.
Nice. Okay, one final question for you, Wren, here. Any final advice for anybody who's aspiring to be a visual effects editor or work on films? Any final advice for them?
I hope that siren's not too big of a deal.
No, it's all good.
So, final advice for people who want to get into visual effects. Was that the question?
Yes. Yes.
I was distracted by people dying.
Don't forget about those guys. Forget about them.
Okay, sorry. Okay, can you ask me the question again? I was thinking about it, then I lost my train of thought. So, final piece of advice for people wanting to get into visual effects?
Yeah, for anybody who's aspiring to be a visual effects editor or get into films in general, any final advice for them?
Learn to have a critical eye. I think this is something that often goes unsaid, which is learn how to be critical, which is, on top of learning how to learning. Okay, I'm going to focus on my critical eye point. Being able to watch something, like say a film, and break down how it was made, or try to understand the reasoning behind certain choices being made for that film, and analyzing it. Like, what is good about this shot? Like, what could be improved on? And if you can develop that eye, like what is good, like develop good taste. If you can develop good taste, that'll help a lot. And you have to be most critical with yourself. Because you can make something and you're probably going to be really proud of it. You're going to be like, yeah, this is great. But if you can step back and take a critical eye to what you've made, you can start to realize that there are many, many places that can be improved on.
Mm-hmm.
There are many things you can do better. But it's all just about developing a taste, you know? If you have bad taste, you're not going to make good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Because what you think is good isn't good, and so what you make isn't going to be good either. So it's all about like trying to figure out, okay, what is good? What is the definition of good, right? You know, like, is it? You just got to develop the eye. You know, develop what makes it something visually pleasing. Like, what makes something cool? Like, what made that moment awesome? And trying to break down why that is the case. You know, always being critical, and also employing critical thinking. So, yeah, that's like where developing taste comes from. And then from there, critical thinking and problem solving comes in for actually getting you to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So being honest with yourself in terms of is this
Yeah,
good
yeah,
or
like,
bad or how to improve, and
and learn
then
how to, especially if you never work with anyone, it can be really hard to take criticism.
true.
Earlier on, I was not very good at accepting criticism, because I'd be really proud of something I did, and then someone would point out like, "Oh, it's not." Especially the worst are when they're like, "Oh, that's not good," and you're like, "You're not good." But then the ones that actually dig deeper are the ones who actually point out critical flaws that maybe you were a little self-conscious about, and those are the ones that are like, "Oh, like I don't want to say you're like." No, I want nothing more than to say you're wrong, but you're not wrong.
It's easier to
Uh,
accept when somebody says, "Hey, that particular aspect you need to improve on," as opposed to, "Hey, this entire thing is."
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like the when accepting criticism, your first gut reaction is to, be stubborn and to like be in denial and be like, your mom's a stop sign. Just be kind of unreasonable. And yet learning to take criticism is to learn to not take things personally. It's very, very easy to take things personally, and that's what you got to learn to not do. The first step is to be critical with yourself, but then also get others to be critical of your work to you. And you're not going to get that from your family or friends, because they're going to just be encouraging. And that's something that I've learned to do fairly well working at Corridor, is to be very critical of the other guy's work and to be very accepting of their very critical notes on your thing. So like you'll spend hours working on something, and I do this all the time where I'll spend a lot of work and effort into something, and I'll sit back and be like,
"Oh no.
All right, yeah, like that looks pretty cool." And then like Sam will come over and be like, "What's that thing there?" Like just like start like just ripping into this effect that I spent hours on. And like my first reaction every time still to this day is to be like, just take a deep breath, and then I'm like, okay, you're making a valid point. You're coming at this from an outside point of view. You're not you lose perspective when you work on something too long, and having fresh eyes, they come in without that lost perspective. And so if you can just learn to not take things personally, they're just viewing something for what it is, you can then learn to take that criticism and be like, okay, you know what, maybe they're onto something, maybe they have a point. I'm going to try fixing, or I'm going to try implementing their notes. And then you spend another hour implementing those notes, and then you sit back, it's actually a lot better now. Like, I didn't think it could be better because I thought it was the best thing ever. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, no, they had a really good point. The effect overall has now improved. And I think that's one area where Corridor has done really well over the last few years, is just being able to riff on each other in an effective way. Because we've learned to take criticism, we've learned to not take things personally, and we are our own worst critic. We rip into each other's effects pretty harshly sometimes. But at the end of the day, the effect comes out better because of that.
Absolutely.
And I think that goes, and that's applicable to any line of work. As long as you can effectively take criticism, not personally, and effectively implement any of those notes, whatever you're making will be better because of it.
Yeah. However many years you have been doing this, you are still developing yourself and your skills.
Yeah.
Through other people. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think if you can find someone to work with, that'll help you more than anything.
Nice.
I was very fortunate to land the opportunity of being able to work with some of the best people doing this on YouTube, and so I'm very honored to be considered part of this group. But that's not reserved to just like me. There are tons of people out there who are very good at what they do, and if you want to do what they do, find other people who do it too, and then work together, push each other to improve. If you have a partner, if you have a friend, and you're both doing it, sit down and be like, all right, we're not going to be personal about this. We're not going to take it personally, even though you'll want to take it personally. I'm making the same points over and over again now. So it's like,
no worries.
Got to be brutal in the sense of being able to take punishment and give punishment and then take it again. Yeah, nice. Pushing yourself in every sense of the word.
Nice. Well, Wren, I do appreciate you sitting down and talking with us here. You know, for any of you guys that are interested in getting into this line of work and getting into YouTube, you know, Wren seriously, thank you for offering advice to everybody out there. Seriously.
Thanks for having me, James. Yeah.
And any plugs? I know Corridor Digital. You guys have a ton of different YouTube channels out there. Any that you want them to go and check out?
Well, I mean, I guess there's the Sam and Nico channel, which is the second channel for Corridor. I'm plugging that one just because that's where where our personalities lie, I guess, in video form. I also have my Twitter account, which I'm very active on, which is Wren the Reaper. It was a name I made in 2006 for my YouTube channel and just kind of stuck with me. A lot of people like it. I don't see how. But it's just one of the things that's like, I was just a dumb kid in high school making a YouTube channel. I'm going to call it Wren the Reaper. That's funny, right? And it's 10 years later. It's
your
here.
Nickname. It's the nickname that sticks.
So, yeah, if you want to follow me on any sort of social media, my name is Wren the Reaper, without the W on Reaper. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, just CorridorDigital. That's where I put out my stuff. I don't have any specific plugs other than that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, you have a good day, man. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Right.
So talking with Wren, it was really apparent that he's just got an enormous amount of great energy and drive and passion in what he does, and it really shows. He's just a wonderful guy, wonderful, nice guy, and hopefully you guys you took away a lot from this episode. And if you get the chance, check him out at Wren the Reaper. Is his YouTube channel. He's also featured on Node, which is a YouTube channel, and Sam and Nico. So if you have time, check out those episodes. They have a lot of fun content that they're putting out pretty much daily, if not every other day. And till next week, guys. Later.